we're going to, so which,
You're gonna be kind of.
yeah, I mean, that would be second place. Good one. So, they just want you to go. Think you live first? Is it? No. I'll stand up that road right here to be talking about, you know.
There you go.
We say things like, where's he going?
Right.
And we'll talk like the commissioners, so we won't sleep into that and hope it picks us up.
Yes, it should pick you up, but, so Jen,
Yes.
how's it going?
Good.
Are you having a good Wednesday? I'm talking too loud for Commissioner Toyuka, but he's actually not gonna be
He's not
here.
gonna be here, so he won't have to worry. Yeah, it's a good Wednesday. I'm exhausted
Oh,
though,
well,
for some odd reason.
we're just doing some
Hi.
mic checks.
Hey, yeah, was I supposed to be gone?
I went on vacation.
I got back.
Did you go, did you go somewhere?
Yeah, we went to Wisconsin.
Oh.
I have a couple sons there, so the place itself isn't necessarily the greatest, but anywhere that you have family, it's a good place.
Well, I love Wisconsin in the summer, I think.
It's beautiful. It really is.
It's very,
Yep,
you know, I think it's cool.
it is. Until it gets 90 degrees with 95% humidity, then you just want to pass out.
It was, they had that kind of. heat
Yeah,
where you-
already, yeah.
That's just heartbreaking. There was a time in my life when I
Yeah.
worked for the federal government and I
You
had.
can sit over there if you want, because we're missing a couple commissioners, that way you don't have to.
Oh, are we,
There's gonna be 3 here for the work session.
That way you can all look straight at each other. And I'm just sitting here because we were asking.
Good to have you all, Anthony. Only I hope there's no difficult legal questions.
Yeah, I do too,
I
because
think.
whatever I make up might get us in trouble.
oh, no, it would be fun,
Guaranteed.
We're gonna take it as advice.
guaranteed. It would be wonderful.
So how have you been, Commissioner Rudd? Is your health cooperating or is it?
Yeah, it's getting a little better every day.
Well, that's good.
I think I'm gonna go back into doing some more, a little more, what am I trying to say, physical therapy.
Yeah,
Cause I'm just not
sure,
feeling very strong.
yeah.
When
Oh,
my,
sure.
when my 10-pound dog can pull me like in a heartbeat, I think I need to strengthen my muscles a little bit.
Well, that's when you have to be glad that you don't have Patty Joe's 125.
I know, I know, I run into her, actually, it's interesting, it's kind of fun, when we, you know, we walkers. And that is one big puppy.
You know, when they get to that size, they're no longer pets. Those are farm animals.
Pretty close.
You know, sometimes when I look at them, I think to myself, could I afford to feed that?
I know.
I mean, I had children that who ate a lot.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
God, I remember when I don't know, my son got to be what, 12?
Man, they can eat.
And all of a sudden, it was just, there was no satisfying it. I mean, it was just relentless.
I remember that. It's crazy the amount of food that they could eat.
It
And they're
really,
always
it
hungry.
really is.
Always.
Always hungry and always busy. And, you know, it is,
It always made me so jealous.
yeah.
I wish I could eat like that.
Dangerous for everybody. though.
Boy, that's, for sure.
Yeah,
I feel like women, once they pass 50, just don't need to eat at all.
I know. I hate that.
You should be a postmenopausal woman. having to go through that. It's not nice. It's not fair, especially when eating becomes one of the great pleasures of your
I
life.
know. One of the only pleasures.
Well, that's
That's the way I feel.
Yeah, other than my grandchildren.
Well, yeah, you have that at least. so
Yeah.
I haven't gotten to that stage quite yet.
Jim has that.
It's pretty good, that's for sure.
There's some food back there, I think, Commissioner. if you're wanting to.
That's. Or we did we have a pandemic hit the board or something?
I think there is illness involved, and then I think Commissioner Banks is out of town, so she's available if she needs to join us, but so we'll see. I don't think the agenda will be difficult tonight, so. And she's at a national dance competition, and her team actually made the finals, which so that's like,
Where are they?
I'm not sure, I didn't ask, he was on the telephone driving, so I didn't have a chance to ask her, but.
Well, that's fun. That's wonderful.
Terry,
There
How are
he
you?
is.
great. How did your little tour go today?
It actually went real well, we had about a dozen, maybe 15,
But
and, it just happened that our crew was. I didn't have the best hat for everybody, but because all the crew was out, we did a quick walk around and they got to. They were intrigued when we went into the survey department and they got to see the old BP
yeah,
that we had on the wall and that kind of thing. So they really enjoyed it, I think.
good. Awesome.
Terry, why didn't we have a big opening when the bridge was finished?
Because they started and stopped. And they opened the bridge up and it was open for about 2 weeks and then it closed back down for 2 days. And now it has reopened again until this fall, they'll be back. They did the striping today. It was more or less just get it open and get the locals back on it.
Exactly. I was out there and, it was, I must have hit those 2 days.
Yeah. Yeah. they were
I have,
back, The 5th and the 6th.
oh, I didn't realize that. 'Cause
They had the piling underneath that they had used to build the bridge, to hold it up while they were building it, the false work, they had that
We
down
tested
there.
that.
And so they come in and they tore those out, and then they had some piles that they'd started that they actually drove and hit the old piles from, that's like the third bridge that's been in there. Since
So that-
1800.
Yeah. yeah.
And they hit those piles, and so they ended up having to cut 3 of them off. Right at the mud line, and they had to come back to do that, they had to wait for the in-water work crew to do that. And so they accomplished that, and then they tore out the old piles and they had some painting to do. They were back out there today and put the striping down. And we were out there with the engineer to find out, there's a few cracks in the bridge.
You
That
mean
bridge was,
The newly constructed one?
yeah, and that's not untypical. They have some cracks in there, it's concrete.
And so it.
And so actually that bridge was designed to settle 3.5 inches over the next 10 years.
That's right,
It was-
bridges are always designed.
Yeah, and so that, they were, they were out there today looking to see if the cracks that were there, if they were something that needed to be sealed. Either now or when they come back, they come back this fall and do the vegetation. Who would have thought that they come through in the hydro season in May? And then we haven't had any rain since May. And so none of the seed germinated, so they've got to come back in September.
They have to be careful what they germinate, right? It has to be.
Well, they've done a special mix that they have because remedial mix that's supposed to be good for the side of the road for where your runoff is from the cars to pick up the
And
oil.
good for the food.
Well, yeah. To me, it's kind of a waste of money because you've got 200 feet of pasture land between the edge of the road and the river.
We know what that.
We're not gonna get a flood until December or January, and so it's kind of throwing good money away as far as I'm concerned, but they have to. We can have a big opening as well.
I mean, nobody else gets excited when we build a new bridge in the county, period.
No, we got excited, or some people got excited when we put
So what I kind of figure is that this will be the first of what maybe additional conversations about special districts, because as I walk through it, you'll see that it's not a simple straight line. It's kind of a muddled network of different statutes, and different types of special districts. And so, as we have questions, we might need to come back specific to certain types of special districts, but what my goal is that after this presentation, you just have a sense of what the different types are, what the unique characteristics of the various types are, and why you see certain types in certain situations and we don't see certain types in other situations. So I'll just kind of walk through all of that for you, and feel free to interrupt me anytime.
Since we're not facing it, everything that you're showing is here.
So, within Oregon, we have various types of local government entities. We have counties, which we all know that there's 36. There's 241 cities, 1,000 plus special districts, and there's more special districts all the time. And then you have 62 plus intergovernmental entities, and I'll talk a little bit more about those, because those are very unique. And so kind of the statutory framework for this falls within three different ORSs, and that's ORS 198, which allows for the creation of special districts. ORS 451 that allows creation of county service districts, and then ORS 190, which is the intergovernmental cooperation statute. And I'm going to take each of those one at a time and talk about them in a little bit more detail. So special districts is a form of local government that is created by a community. One of the characteristics, though, is it has to be for a single service area. So a special district that's created under ORS 198 cannot be for multiple types of varying services. They have to be for one. So you can have it for a water district, you can have it for a rural fire district, but they can't do multiple things. So when you see a special district, they're saying, we're going to do this one thing, like Parks and Rec. So.
Because if I have, speaking hypothetically, of course, a water district that wants to do, speaking hypothetically, land use planning, the same. How is that monitored or enforced?
It's really not. I mean, there would have to be. It would be monitored and enforced through the governing body. I mean, they could not go outside of their charter. So they don't have the ability to make land use ordinances. That's the purview of the board of commissioners. The comp plan that's going to apply is the county comp plan. So if you have a water district that is using water as a means to influence a community, that may be okay. It's just that they would be held accountable through their own governing process. So unless county council has a better answer, but there is nobody that overseeing that. Certainly the county is not, so.
Maybe the news.
So they're single purpose, and the reason why I'm pointing that out is county service districts are not. So if it's formed under 198, a single purpose, it's typically established by election of registered voters. And typically when you create a special district, you're also going to have taxing authority. So you go to the voters to create the district and to fund the district. So there is a role for the board of commissioners, and I'll talk about that. But these are independent entities. They're independent governing bodies. They have an elected board. They're completely independent. They're not city, they're not the county, and they're not school district. There's something else. And that something else is a special district. So they are autonomous beings. If you see an organization as a living organism, that's what they are. So. Please.
So when these
districts are created, is there any oversight in terms of what the boundaries are gonna be? And I assume they're gonna have to have a charter of some kind. What is it called? What do they have? Do they have?
Yeah, so I'm gonna talk about that in just,
Oh, okay.
in just a
Okay.
second. I'll kind of walk through what the process is.
Okay.
So you won't be able to really see this very well, but there's all kinds of different special districts and they're all laid out by statute. And on the screen that you can't see, it's scrolling through a bunch of them, but you can have utility districts, water supply districts, cemetery maintenance districts, park and rec districts, road districts, health districts, rural fire districts, irrigation district, drainage, port, transportation, 911 communications, libraries, and a handful of others. And so statutes dictate what those single purposes are that a special district can be formed for. So if it's outside of those statutory areas, you can't form a district. So, and then the most common district statewide is, not surprisingly, fire protection. When you think about the number of rural fire agencies in the state, that's not a number that is surprising at all. In fact, sometimes I think I'm surprised it's not higher. But after that, you have road district, domestic water district, water improvement district. So you can kind of see others of note is there are 6 emergency communication districts statewide, which are 911,
Almost.
because not all of them are formed under this statute. So you can also form 911 districts under both the county service district statute and the ORS 190 statute. And so when you think about special districts, literally one type could be formed in 3 different manners. And so there is overlap. Statutes allow certain of these types to also be formed as a 451 district, which is a county service district, or by a 190. But they're obviously covering a lot of ground with the types of services. And the reason why we have special districts is because counties, cities, but counties specifically are general purpose governments. By design, we are vanilla. And we do certain things, we don't do other things. And when a community needs something at a higher level or something unique, as long as it's statutorily provided for, that is the mechanism for citizens to rally and say, we want enhanced road maintenance, or we want a water system. You know, instead of wells, we want a municipal water system. We want a sanitary sewer district. So there's a lot of reasons, but these oftentimes are citizen-led districts. Doesn't mean that counties can't also enable them, but they truly are citizen-led oftentimes. So what is the county's role when a 198 forms? When a 198 forms, there is a process that includes a petition of the county to form a district. And as part of that petition process, they have to define what it is they're going to do, what resources that they need, what facilities that they might need. So they basically have to have a business plan for that service. They have to identify what the AV is, what the boundaries are, what the AV is within those boundaries, what a potential tax rate would be, what their other revenue sources are. They have to come up with a plan because they're basically forming an organization. And so that happens, and then oftentimes that then will come to the board. And if it includes territory that is in a city, it would also have to go to a city, because cities have to agree to have a special district overlay them. And it's just by consent. But then the board would have to approve the boundaries, and then they would have approve the petition, and then it would go to the voters. Because almost every special district needs to have a tax rate. And so that would then go to the voters. So then the board has very limited roles if a district is not functioning legally, meaning it doesn't have legally seated members. So if a district has a governing body of 5 and they have 3 vacancies and they can't conduct business, the Board of Commissioners is granted the authority to appoint members to the committee that would allow them to legally function as a board. And that could happen with some of our special districts. What we've seen with the recent special district was when they weren't functioning as a board, we waited a 3-year period for the secretary to basically inform us that it'd been 3 years, and so then your board dissolved the district, and that was the Skipanon flood control district. And so there is a county role in dissolution of a district, and sometimes there's a county role in actually merging, because if a district is not functional, sometimes it would make sense to merge it with an adjacent district. That can happen with fire districts. Oftentimes they will merge. And so formation, the board has a role. What's the boundaries? Do they make sense? Does the petition hold some validity? And then the dissolution merger process. There is nothing in the statutes that as we've talked regarding the county coming in if a district is making decisions the board doesn't agree with or is not functioning at a level that meets community needs. As long as they have, the county doesn't have a role other than influence. So.
Now, you mentioned that the Secretary of State decided that Skipanon had not, do they have an annual reporting mechanism that they
Yeah,
have to do?
we all file certain reports annually, financial reports. And so,
To the Secretary.
yeah, and so after 3 years of not performing their fiduciary responsibilities, then they inform us. But we all knew that was happening. We were actually part of the process. Because with that district specifically, the assessment was, it was okay for it to dissolve. They had 2 assets, one asset the county could take ownership of and actively manage, the other, the city of Warrenton could take ownership of. And so, and it's the county assets, the one that is in the lake. And so that's just one example, but we knew that was coming and it was okay. I think there are certain special districts though, that if they are not financially, performing and they can't meet basic services and service levels, that's where it would get tough for the board. Because if they didn't have a legally situated governing body, we would have to appoint people, but we would also maybe have to help get them through that tough time. And that means people like myself having to get involved in a special district, and not that we would have any responsibility for it, but it's in all of our interest to see these special districts survive and thrive. And so there's some gray areas that, what you rely upon is the relationship between the special districts and other governmental entities to help each other out. And that's kind of the way we've developed, especially since COVID, is that all the jurisdictions are talking to each other. We are collaborating. There are situations that we haven't been involved in some of the conversations at a special district level. And when we're not, we can't help. When we are, we can obviously help. And so I think that there is some risk with special districts always for a county. It's not a direct risk. It's not a risk to our coffers per se. It's just a risk that we may have to go in and provide some leadership to get something done. So
So if I may, follow up on that. So there's misfeasance, malfeasance, and non-feasance. If there's non-feasance, the reports aren't produced, submitted, that's pretty easy. The misfeasance and the malfeasance are maybe in the eye of the beholder. The only accountability for a special district board is the ballot box or a courtroom. So the county commissioners can try and exert moral authority or relationship to fortify or that kind of thing, but Senator Johnson informed me at one point, I would quote her, but you can't make a rule to tell somebody not to behave that. And you can imagine how she expressed it.
Yeah.
Which is how she did. So the idea of public opinion or moral suasion, when folks really get involved in these things, because they want to do good for their community, however they see it. So they either do something that you think, oh man, that's a bad idea, or they fail to do something well enough to keep a special district going. I mean, we just saw a transit district in big trouble. How do we help where there's a huge community need? Because that's why a special district formed. There's a huge community need that isn't met. What do we do?
I mean, there's no statutory role for the county. So what it comes down to, and that goes back to what I was saying, is what you hope is you have the kind of relationships with the special districts, and hopefully they have good enough internal warning systems that if they see something coming that is concerning from a financial perspective or legal perspective, that they have enough warning to tell other people, so that we as a community of interest, because obviously the interest on a transportation system is huge, from the nonprofit sector, the public sector, the private sector, it touches every sector, that having enough lead time so that there can be a community conversation with other executive level folks, elected folks, to figure out what is the path in the case of the transit district, not to have to curtail services, but to buy time so that they could talk with the state and figure out, A, what happened, B, what's the future funding that will sustain us. I think what is always difficult is when you have to make decisions about curtailment, because building back up after ceasing operations is just hard. It's a really hard process. So I think it's just early warning systems and then relationships. But by statute, there's no county role in those situations.
So there's no stick. We're looking for carrots. We're maybe looking for systems, because I'm telling you, as a person from South County, nobody wants Astoria telling us what to do. We may not even want each other telling us what to do. So how do we, as really the best intention, but covering the whole geographic entity? I mean, I'm not looking for an answer, but one reason I wanted us to talk about this was so that we could contemplate if there were something, whether it's a conference or if you said the electeds meet, but I don't know that there's SDAO, but that doesn't, how to pull in so that all the essential services, insofar as possible, continue to meet the needs of people who will otherwise suffer.
Yeah, I don't know what the easy answer to that is, because when you're looking at over 1,000 special districts, statewide, 36 counties, there's just an immense number of special districts. What it really requires, and this is not fail proof by any measure, but it requires for every district to have the systems and the structures in place to know where they are, know where they're going, and whether they have the financial feasibility and wherewithal to get there. And if they don't, they then need to be able to pivot and raise that to other people who, again, who statutorily don't have a role, but have a role because they have a shared community concern about a specific service. And that, I think, could happen with some of these special districts that are having challenges, that they pull in kind of a cabinet of other experts that can help them, think through the challenge. And some of these districts are really small, some of them are really large. And it really spans from having 1,000 employees to having no employees. So,
I don't know the answer, but I'm thinking of volunteer fire districts. I'm thinking of all of these. I don't know that we have a legislative fix or a practical process or any way to address it, but I just wanted us to contemplate it because it impacts the
yeah.
people we care about.
No, absolutely.
Well, and I think it also impacts us when we have to step in, even if it's having your board have to appoint
Yeah.
governing board members, that
Yeah.
takes time, energy, and effort. If we have to come in and actually provide some oversight for a short period, that takes capacity from the county too. And so I think it's gonna be something that we all need to continually think about, because it's a vulnerability everywhere, so. So just a little bit more about Clatsop County special districts. We have 46 active special districts within Clatsop County. So out of that 1,000, 1,000 includes some of the county service districts, but we have 46. Within the county organization, we have two, the road district and the rural law enforcement district. The road district was formed even before the actual 198 statute that was formed in the early 70s, I believe. But it's still formed and governed through that statute. And then rural law enforcement, and rural law enforcement has its own board that are elected. And then external to the county, we have 44 that span everything from education to rural fire, 13 rural fire districts, and water districts, transit districts. So we have a lot of special districts here. So
Can I ask a question about some of these? Because for instance, the soil and water conservation districts, I know are very, very old. I think that was actually federal legislation that it goes back to the 19th century. And so they have an entirely, it's interesting to me because, I've worked with the soil and water conservation districts in other states, and they had much more clout. They were much more active. They were much better funded. And then when I was appointed or liaison to the soil and water conservation district here, it was, to be honest, quite a disappointment for somebody who believes very much in the development of our rural economy. I didn't see them doing a whole lot. So, and I'm sure, so when you were describing before about how often it's an ordinance that creates a special district, and the ordinances can be different one from the other. This is, I guess, my observation that, boy, these function really differently.
yeah,
It's quite
and there are
amazing.
individual ordinances that guide every one of these.
Yeah,
So,
So
and
it's-
that's why I'm not, certainly in this 30, 40 minutes, it's impossible for us to kind of go through every single statute that is guiding the unique formation and the governance of these. But there certainly are individual ordinances that are individual statutes that are guiding the
Yeah.
formation and the governance of all these different entities. So,
the urban renewal, we have two urban renewal districts that I know of, one in Warrenton and one here in Astoria.
and it's probably because only one of them may be formed under this 198.
Because once again, it's really a federal issue.
But even oftentimes federal programs are still organized at the state level and they're formed under state statute.
Okay,
So,
okay, so this is, okay.
Yeah.
So we're talking about 198 here.
So 198, single purpose, they have their own governing body, completely independent. We do care, but they're completely independent. So then I'm gonna talk real quick about the county service districts, which are also service districts. These districts are formed, by the county government. They're actually governed by the Board of Commissioners. They can serve more than one service area.
You mean geographic or?
No,
programmatic?
one programmatic area. They typically serve within a county. So special districts can span counties. They can be multiple counties, different cities in adjoining counties. For the county service districts, it can be unincorporated, it can be a mix of incorporated and unincorporated, but it is within a county. And so there's the same kind of a petition process. Sometimes it is actually started and managed by the board or the county. Sometimes it can still come from a citizen-led petition. Typically, there'll be a taxing element to this one also, so it would go to the voters to then approve any kind of tax rate that would come along with it. The biggest discerning factor is that it's governed by the Board of Commissioners. It in our form of government, you would be the policymakers, and I would be assisting in the management of the special district. And so you have different types. Sorry about that, I'm kind of behind here, but you have different subjects or types of services that can be provided. And we have one of these, which is the agricultural extension service. You can have diking and flood control districts formed under this, but you can have those formed under the other two. Drainage districts, EMS, law enforcement, library, parks and rec. You can see that there's a lot of overlap between what can be formed as a 198 and what can be formed as a 451. The difference is just what do you want the governing model to be? Do you want the governing model to be within the 10th of the county? Or do you want to have an independent board that's not responsible to the county? So here we have two county service districts right now. We have 4-H and extension service district, and we have Westport that was also formed under that. So both 198 and 451 are options when it comes to special district. Both of them are oftentimes members of the Special District Association. It's just the governing body is different, and the tentacles that it has to the county are different. So the county has the formation role where your board is a governing board for the 451, and you still have the same role with dissolution and mergers. Is there any questions about that? That's more straightforward. So now I'm going to dive into the intergovernmental entity one. This is something that is unique. There's only 60 plus in the county or in the state. Hopefully there's not 60 plus in the county. So intergovernmental entities that are formed under 190, these are agreements between governmental entities. Sometimes they are just an IGA, and there's no entity created. It's just these 2 governments, 3 governments, 5 governments are just agreeing to work together on some specific service, some specific coordination opportunity, a study. It could be anything, and that is under the 190 organizational framework. But the intergovernmental entity framework is more formal. It's when these governmental entities come together and they say, we want to form an entity that doesn't exist now, and it's going to serve all of the parties. So they have to actually talk through governance, service, funding. So they have to create this IGA framework that they're going to actually deploy as a new entity. So it can be created by 2 or more units of government through a written agreement. Typically, it is not governed by specific elected officials. Oftentimes, there's staff members that are on the board, sometimes there's community members that are on the board. There are some where elected officials are. It just varies, but you have representation from all the parties. So if there's 3 counties, you would have representatives from all 3 counties that would be part of the governing body. There's a governance framework that can vary greatly, so you have a lot of flexibility on how you create these. And I'm going to give some examples and you'll see how varied that they are. And a unique factor is that non-governmental stakeholders can be part of the governing board. So why and when do you create a 190? The project or services is complex and a single agency sometimes cannot perform it well independently. There's just an agreement that they could do it better together. And the ideal goal is that it's going to be a long-term arrangement. So there's some examples of some 190s. Association of Northern Counties is actually a 190. Washington County has a consolidated communications agency, which is their PSAP, which is their 911 system. So all the cities and the county have agreed to form a 190 entity. One of the factors with the 190 entity, though, is that it cannot raise taxes itself. So 190s are typically user fee driven, which means every individual entity pays in to the funding of that organization. So there's just some unique factors. So when you think about consolidated 911, since that's a topic that is currently being evaluated by the cities and the county and fire districts, is that you could form it under a 198. You can form it under a 451. So you could have an independently elected board that oversees the 911 system. And you can imagine how firefighters and police officers could feel about that. So oftentimes they're not formed under 198. Sometimes they're formed under 451. The County Board of Commissioners is then the governing body for the consolidated 911 system. Depends on the county, depends on the relationship with the cities and fire, but it's sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't. So then what you oftentimes get to is this 190, because under a 190, the fire first responders and the police first responders have a seat at the governance table to actually oversee the 911 system. And typically that's what they prefer. The bottom side there is all of the costs and all the revenues are going to be driven by the user agency, as opposed to creating a special district and going to the voters and asking for a levy or for an actual permanent rate. And so that's where it gets complicated. On the one side, you have the benefits of governance, but on the other side, you have the downside of not being able to actually raise tax revenue to pay for the service. And I think that's where it gets difficult for a 190. Is it's great if the agencies can continually pay for the service. It gets tough when you have small jurisdictions that don't have the financial wherewithal of large jurisdictions. And so usually part of the governance model for a 190, and I'm speaking specifically to the 911 system, will include a fee schedule that will protect the small entities, and the larger entities make up the difference. So the larger entities subsidize the smaller entities because they have more ability to absorb cost of living adjustments, infrastructure investments. And so over in Washington County, the small entities were all capped. They could only go up 3% a year, which meant the large entities, and I'm talking large entities, I mean, the large entities, which would be City of Beaverton, over 100,000 residents, City of Hillsborough, over 100, Washington County, 650,000 residents. they would help subsidize the smaller agencies. That worked for them, but even then, at some point, there's always this question of should we change the form of government? Because we may lose our governance, but we would have access to some tax revenues. So it's a dance when you think about forming governments, and forming a 190 is forming a government, but it's a very different government because it's going to be a shared governance model with whoever is at the table. So,
Well, and the levy is on top of the tax rate, so it's not subject to compression, but it's at the will of the voters.
well, so for special districts, most of them are just going for the permanent rate. So when you form a district, you would go for the permanent rate, which would be compression related. And then if you needed something beyond that, there can be levies. There's also GO bonds. If you need to build a 911 center and you need to actually access the ballot, a 198 organization can do that. 451 organization can do that. A 190 organization cannot. It's just one of the participating 190 organizations may do it on behalf of all the other entities. And in that case, it would be whoever has jurisdiction common to the entire 190. And if it's a countywide,
Yeah.
I wonder who that is. And so then it becomes the burden for the county to then be the vehicle to help fund from a GO bond the infrastructure that the whole system needs. And so there's a lot of complexities to it. And the reason why I'm bringing up the 190 is because these are the conversations that are going on now as we start talking about consolidated 911. And there's legitimate perspectives on all sides. If you're very price sensitive, you might be willing to engage in a different governance model than if you're not price sensitive. Because if you're not price sensitive, you would say, we want governance by the experts who actually use this system. You know, having fire chiefs, police chiefs, sheriffs, still elected officials, but having them be part of the governance makes sense. If you have a standalone 198 organization and there's an elected board of 5 people from wherever, grounds and whatever, and you have fire chiefs and police chiefs trying to get what they need. So there's a lot of different complications with that. So, you know, I'm certainly sensitive as a county manager that we want these special districts to thrive. And we have to be available to help them, or at least work with them as they go through the regular tribulations of governing. And we certainly have. We've spoken to a number of special districts since I've been here. But at the end of the day, what's best for the county is to have strong districts. And that's what we hope for. We do have some districts that we may have to deal with at some point because they may not have a fully constituted governing board. And so at some point, we may identify some of those and we may have to come to the board and see who we might appoint within those districts to have a standing board. Could a special district fail? Certainly. And then we would have to go in and evaluate what the options are. Is it a merger opportunity? Is it a dissolution opportunity? It doesn't mean that we have to start spending general fund money to make up for whatever the service is. But some of these special districts are providing vital services. And so it is a complicated factor. And there's not a lot of statutory guidance on how to navigate the gray. And so, you know,
So Colpack is the 192, right?
Yeah, it is,
And
or it is a 190, I think.
yeah, and the reason I bring that up is because when I look at where is the revenue, Colpack, like Cedar, but more broadly, is to be the revenue generation development entity. So it helps pay for itself and more is the idea of why we do that. And I look at some place like, say, Hamlet Fire that has no paid staffers and wonder how long people out of the goodness of their heart are going to be able to continue to do that. So I'm looking at potential areas of need and potential developers of capacity to meet the need. So I'm glad we're participating in that. We're getting a new executive director for Colpack, because when we're looking at the impact of the Habitat Conservation Plan and the FIOP and all of that, somebody said to me at a meeting, so Leanne, is Putnam County going to join with another county because otherwise you're going to go broke? And I thought, oh, I should ask that question.
I can give you the county manager answer, but.
Give you an answer. But when we're looking at longer term trends, because we have a 4-year term of office and whatever. But if we're looking down the road and we're looking at what curtails revenue for this county, I mean, the county manager and all of us are working as hard as we can, wherever we can, to get access to revenue to provide county services.
Yes, yeah, I think that, I mean, what is always, what's always challenging is that, no government has even the wherewithal to do everything that they need to do at the service level that is really required. And, we certainly don't. And I mean, I think we do an amazing job for what we have. And I think we are actually being a role model in many ways for a lot of rural counties as we work through the homeless issues and the affordable housing issues. But when you think about the line between success and failure for any organization, it's a lot skinnier than any of us would ever want. And I think one of the things I talked to the governor about, Sheriff Coyle and I both did, is just rural counties are different, and our reserves and our capacity to expand revenues is very restricted compared to what the metro counties have. And I explained some of the reasons, and I'll, as your board knows, we're going to come in September, October and talk about kind of what the financial options are as we move forward. But it is a little frightening when every government is on the edge, special districts, certainly county, city, school district, and I think that's the part that we've been trying to really highlight for our state partners, is it's already challenging, but it gets exponentially more challenging and we need help. And that's my conversations with the governor's office last week about, transient lodging tax and other things. So it is going to be a challenge, and, we haven't even spoken about some of the diking districts and, and so.
I mean, to me, they're sort of the poster children of and I guess I'm particularly anxious for us to start dealing with the effects of climate change and sea level rise and the other environmental things that we're facing, which are just going to make our situation worse as we go on. And for which we have to have a longer view than we usually do in our annual budget processes. And I think you know, working with folks like the Dyking districts is something that should be really high on our, really high on our. agenda.
And just so your board knows, and I think you do know this, but Justin is doing a lot of work to kind of summarize where we are with the Dyking
Good.
districts, working with them on potential grant opportunities. But there's a lot there, and it's a very complex, because even Dyking districts, there's multiple types and multiple formation
Yep.
elements, and so we are working through that. We're lucky to have an emergency management director who has background in that area, so.
Piggyback on that. Yes, longer term. Yes. Multi dimensional in terms of some local fund, some state fund. There's got to be federal money for this, and there's got to be federal attention on this.
Oh, there are. I
Well,
mean,
no. Just, all I'm saying is, how do we wrap our minds around planning so that we are integrating with what exists? So we've done strategic planning, and I know you say, "Mister, are you always trying to make my life more challenging?" And the answer is, well, yeah, probably. Well, because we've got this level done at a pretty good level of mastery for our current strategic plan. I don't want to take us beyond our capacity to cope, but like you, I share the longer term multi-jurisdictional focus. And I don't know how much we can talk about it, or if we just kind of notice that it's happening, because we can't control it. But you've done a masterful job of coordinating the muscle movement within Clatsop County. So maybe there's an opportunity here. I'm trying to sweeten this up a little. Maybe there's an opportunity here for us to at least initial exploration. Not that we can do it all, but that we are thinking about it and we want to articulate it, even if we can't fully explain it or solve it, certainly. Thank you,
Well-
I needed to say that.
Well, no, and I agree with you completely, and that's one of the reasons I spend probably 3 or 4 hours a week attending webinars, which the state is doing a wonderful job right now of putting together for us about all the new federal legislation. And, you know, we have to constantly be looking out for opportunities to
Yeah.
augment
And what I would say
what we
is
have.
that we've had staff are participating in those too, and I think that there are gonna be opportunities, but it's much of what we've learned with the state on some of the opportunities that are presented to us on a number of other topics. I'm wondering how I can say this in a really diplomatic way, but, I think part of what has to really happen is the rural counties have to be seen for what we are, which is we are capacity limited. And the processes that they're putting in front of us right now make it so it's gonna be less likely that we actually access some of these opportunities, because if you look at the county now, we're already strained. Then you overlay all these complex processes, you overlay the BIOP, you overlay HTP, you overlay wetland, just general wetland regulations, lack of industrial land, lack of developable land. It's just, and then what happens to the economy, there's just so many levels. I think you're right, that's kind of what the next level of our, evolution is, but I just want to be honest about the complications that are going with this. And that's why at the end of the day, from the county manager's chair, I focus on, doing those essential things really well, making sure that we are relevant to the communities we serve at those really foundational levels that make all other things possible, and then have enough bandwidth to try to make some of these other things possible. But I'm a little concerned as we get hit with the HCP, as we get hit with whatever regulations may come out of the BIOP, as we continually don't get enough support from the state. What does that really look like? So
So that's why hang out at AOC to try and work through those committees. What I'm trying to do is to have a short, trying to get a unified regional approach that's coordinated, because we can't do it all, but to have our sister counties be part of this thing together so that we can go to our state legislators and go to our federal legislators and ask for help. Because we can't do it alone. You know, one of the,
But everything you want to.
No.
I just want to make sure the county council.
I have two questions.
Sure.
One is, why, which of these rubrics does, or I assume it's the third one, it's a 190s would be a council for government.
190.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what is,
Columbia River Estuary Study Council.
I just know the acronym. What is that?
I'm not sure
The
what
council of government.
is the council. So it would be,
Oh, it's a council of government.
so
Okay,
it would be a 190.
okay. Because okay.
Yeah, there's different forms of even councils of government, as you can imagine. So Crest is a very unique one compared to what you see in the valley and.
Yeah.
So,
thank you for doing that.
oh, it's.
That's a great presentation.
This is
Really
wonderful.
pointing us in the right direction and frame of mind.
Well, and
Things coming up.
what I've said is I assume this is the beginning,
Yeah.
so we'll have more.
Wonderful.
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
Hang on.
6 minutes, so we can.
Hey. Sounds relaxing.
Yeah. Right here.
Here.
No, you can leave that one that you did. Yeah, yep. Yeah.
It's time. We all ready to go? Okay. Okay, the Board of Commissioners as the governing body of Clatsop County, all county service districts for which this body so acts, and as the Clatsop County Local Contract Review Board is now meeting in regular session. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I'd like to welcome everybody here this evening. We'll begin with the roll call. Clerk of the board?
Chair Quayler,
Here.
Vice Chair Bang,
She is excused this evening,
Commissioner Toyuka,
and he is excused this evening as well.
Commissioner Webb. Here. Commissioner Thompson.
Commissioner Thompson's here, no excuses.
Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move on to the agenda approval. We had an opportunity to review the agenda at the work session. Any questions, comments?
Move to approve the agenda,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next is business from the public. So this is an opportunity for anyone to give a 2-minute presentation about any item on the agenda, except for public hearings, or any topic of county concern that is not on the agenda. Clerk of the board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
No one has signed up remotely.
Okay. And I think we do have some folks that are here with us this evening that have signed up to speak. First is Rick Bowers. Rick?
Rick Bowers, 357 Commercial Street here in Astoria. Over the past several months, I've shared various facts related to housing and homelessness. Today, I'm going to add my opinion about the direction the state seems to be taking. Recent legislation steers Oregon in a new direction towards attempting to solve the housing crisis. I briefly talked about this before, but in a nutshell, Oregon is modeling its housing forecasting methodology on California's approach. The handout contains a table showing the consultant's 20-year forecast for our county. They estimate 48% of the needed housing is in the range from extremely low to low income, likely subsidized housing. Having accurate forecasts is one thing, actually building the housing is another. I'm afraid Oregon is headed down the same path as California, which I think we all know has a worse housing crisis and corresponding homelessness crisis than we do. California has used 8-year planning building cycles and is in the process of wrapping up cycle 5. For the last 5 years, 83% of the developed housing has been in the above 120% area median income category, when much of the demand, as well as the goals, are for less expensive housing. So they've been at this for 40 years, and they're still building the wrong type of housing. Like California, Oregon's approach seems to be encouraging rather than requiring local jurisdictions to make substantive changes to policies, procedures, codes, and/or ordinances. My point, I suspect we're going to have housing shortage for decades and should plan on supporting homeless folks for decades. We can't focus on Band-Aid solutions hoping the homelessness problem will go away. It won't go away given Oregon's current strategy, in my humble opinion.
Thank you very much, Rick. Clerk of the board, do we have anybody else that signed up to speak?
We do not.
Okay. Anybody else that's here this evening that wanted to participate in public comment? Okay, we'll move from public comment to the consent calendar. Any comments, questions on the consent calendar?
Move to approve the consent calendar, Mr. Chair.
I second.
Moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar as presented. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Commissioners' reports. We'll start with Commissioner Webb.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. First of all, I guess I'm still absorbing the results of the legislative session. No matter how many times I read AOC reports or our consultants' reports, it's a huge amount to take in. It really is.
Yeah.
And so it's, I hope that we're going to get some help. I'll bet we're going to get some help from staff about stipulating for us what some of the things are that we need to address that are coming out of the sessions. It's really monumental, I think, this time. One of the things that happened that I'm personally happy got a lot of public pushback was the forestry department's wildfire mapping that happened. And I was confused through it. I guess we didn't have a lot of input into it, as I recall. And I think apparently the PrEC is going to remedy some of those. And I would recommend to my fellow commissioners and anybody else interested in the topic that you go to the Oregon Public Broadcasting. They have had a couple of really good articles, and they have a noontime show called Think Out Loud that I often try to listen to, and they did a wonderful presentation. I think it was earlier this week, but it can all be accessed on their website, about which brought in the folks who are now going to be rewriting the plan. And it's going to have a completely different process this time than it did last time. And there are going to be I think the legislature made them make a lot of changes. But it's a really good presentation by OPB about it. And so I recommend it highly. Look at the conversation, because it's very clear that they're going to be doing a number, I think they're doing 8 regional sessions, and we're going to have a much more opportunity to do some linking into it. I'm hoping that we'll be able to work with Extension, because they have a fire resilience professional right on their staff, and so maybe we can even do some local things, since we've got a few trees in our county that.
Okay.
So I recommend that.
Could I follow up on that?
Yes, you may.
The Department of Forestry, you will be happy to know, is going to come to the district meetings of the AOC in order to meet their commitment under the statute for those 8 meetings. That's going to be our opportunity. It's going to be down in Tillamook County. We've been talking about this we had a AOC district chairs meeting and talked about, what are your hot button issues? What do you want AOC to do? What do you want AOC not to do? Now, you're going to ask me when it is. I can't remember. Okay, just so you know, I'll send you the email. But at the end of every district meeting, the Department of Forestry is going to take that opportunity to meet with the commissioners regionally. So it'll be in September. That'll be our opportunity. So you're right integrated with that.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
That's great.
Shall I continue? Are you done or no?
Are you going to demand that all state initiatives now come through our committees, our committees?
Me demanding? Moi? Kidding.
You and me together, sister.
So,
It's a heck of an idea.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb and Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, sir. On the contrary, well, so I've been thinking a lot about how do we as Clatsop County coordinate with our regional partners. Because as we do that, we create not only that coordinated muscle movement that the county manager talks about internally, but we work with the county commissioners in Columbia and Tillamook and Lincoln and Western Washington through, for example, the AOC District 7, which is Columbia, Clatsop, Tillamook, and Lincoln. So we had another meeting this week and talked about who's going to be the committee chairs next year under Commissioner Bethel's leadership as she becomes AOC president. So we're reaching out to see who's going to be the committee co-chairs, because the committee co-chairs and others have a seat on the AOC board and the AOC legislative committee. So what we're trying to do is to take a thoughtful, organized approach to be able to talk about our regional needs with each other and then present a unified community of interest at the AOC. We hope that works well. The other I hope to be able to come to that meeting, and I'm not sure if I will because I have some medical things that may interfere with that, but we will look at having Clatsop County presence there. It will be in Tillamook County, and the other county commissioners are working together with us so that we are unified. That unified approach is also happening with COLPAC. You know, we talked about how Columbia Pacific Economic Development Region is looking for a new executive director. We had 17 applicants to replace Ariane Colombo, 17. Awesome. And we're moving next week to have more interviews, then we'll have final interviews. We're hoping to have a new ED by the end of this month. There will be overlap with Ariane Colombo as she both supports her replacement and gets ready to go to graduate school. Yeah. So that's, you know, she's really done a wonderful job. Nate Stice is working with us as Regional Solutions. Jennifer Purcell, Kevin Leahy, Michelle Bradley from the Port of Tillamook Bay. There are several other people on the interview committee, the selection committee. So we're working together, again, a unified approach. Northwest Act, didn't I tell you I was going to the, they call it the Super Act. It's the ACT chairs from all over the state, the area committees on transportation. Again, looking for a unified approach. So that was in Kaiser last week. The chair of the OTC, the Oregon Transportation Commission, is Julie Brown from Medford. She was there. The vice chair, former Senator Lee Byer, was there as well. So we had the chair and the vice chair of the OTC. The big issue is ODOT doesn't have enough money. Well, not only do we not have enough money, to the extent that ODOT is using state funds to remedy past social injustice, the whole transportation system is increasingly underfunded. So they're looking at a road usage charge because tolling is increasingly problematic. What we're looking to do is, I told both the chair and the vice chair of the OTC, what we're looking to do in Clatsop County is to have a traffic safety committee or commission, the functioning of which we will define later when we figure out how to do it. But we're looking to have a local entity that will listen to community members' concerns about the traffic system. Then whatever can be solved locally will be solved locally. Whatever needs to go up to the Northwest Act will go to the Act because that's ODOT staff. Then that will go up through the Super Act, through the ODOT hierarchy to the Oregon Transportation Commission. That's the executive branch of government. But what we're going to do at AOC is have a special subcommittee of the Transportation Community Development Committee at AOC to deal with transportation system issues. Because Commissioner Doran, Commissioner Andrus, Commissioner Savas, Commissioner Scar, and we're all interested in that. It has the support of Jana Nickel, the executive director. That way, we can take things that can't be handled through the executive branch, take them up through the legislative branch, advocate for them through AOC and through the constituent county commissions. So that's the kind of teamwork that we're looking to do so that we can address locally and across the state the issues that we see here. Because last weekend, I don't know if you know this, there was a homicide in an STR in Tillamook County. It's not news, right? But there was a 4 to 5 hour traffic jam around Seaside, increasingly around Seaside, because a semi-truck turned over. I mean, one lane north and one lane south clogs up very easily. So how do we look at adequate funding? How do we look at options analysis? How do we look at developing alternatives? So we're part of those conversations.
Well, we really appreciate you being part of those conversations, both on ACT and on COLPAC and for AOC. I mean, those are extremely important leadership roles that you are engaged in, and we really appreciate all of your efforts. And we're all supportive of, obviously the transportation one as it affects all of us. So appreciate all you're doing. I attended the NOAA board meeting, monthly board meeting last Thursday. Some of the updates on that was that, they have CIS as their insurer for their property insurance. Their deductibles are going from $5,000 to $25,000 per claim. They are going to hire a recruiter to go out for the new executive director. So that was a big step, that they are going to engage with the recruiter. They have a committee that's continuing to meet weekly, and they need maintenance technicians. I think they're still down 2 maintenance technicians, and so they have some interviews scheduled for that. That's very important because they need to turn the units, and without adequate maintenance positions, they're not able to do so, and that's critical. Lastly, they gave an update on all of their developments. Obviously, the Broadleaf Harbor, they have 3 buildings that are fully leased, and they have 75 units planned for that. They talked about Trillium House and the grand opening of Trillium House, which is extremely exciting to get those 42 units online. And then, of course, they're having some issues with Owens & Dare, and they're going to be working on that, and also with permitting with the city. And finance can't close until their permits are issued. So that's something that they're still kind of working through the process. But it was a good meeting, and one of the things that had come up was that the meeting minutes, I know that this has been some folks that have contacted me, not just Rick, but others, about how come you can't get the agendas, how come you can't get the packets in advance of the meetings, and how come they're not posted on the website. So I did have the discussion with the executive director. He says they are working on it. So they're working with their web manager that they are going to get those available so that people can have those in advance of the meetings, and then also have them posted afterwards, minutes. So that's, I think, a good step in the right direction. Hopefully it can happen soon. That's all I have.
Could I just add one more thing? And thank you for that work, because that's essential. Congresswoman Bonamici came to Elk Creek Terrace, which is operated by the Community Action Team. We've talked about the personal tragedy of the losses there. Congresswoman Bonamici is sympathetic to the needs for the redevelopment there. I mean, it is the only low-income housing in Cannon Beach. It's at the point in its deterioration where millions of dollars worth of rehabilitation is required.
Yeah.
So I appreciate very much that she came. I'm sure if she could write a check for us, she would. We'll see what happens in the meantime, but she's listening, and she's on the ground with us.
That's great. Yeah, we always appreciate when she makes the money. County Manager.
Chair Quayle, members of the board, I think I'm going to say this for the first time, but I don't have a report today.
Oh my gosh.
What, did you just take too much time off this week? Is that the deal?
It doesn't feel like that's why, but I think you've heard enough from me during work session, so thanks.
No, I just want to say, County Manager, I know that you have a tremendous workload where you collaborate with all the departments very efficiently. And you also deal with a lot of phone calls from the commissioners and meetings and everything. I don't know how you balance everything, but you're doing a tremendous job, and thank you so much and, for all your efforts. All right, so we don't have a county manager's report. We'll go on to the business agenda, which is the approval of the collective bargaining agreement on page 145. County manager. Oh, here, go ahead. My apologies.
Chair Quill, I should ask, I'm not sure if everybody's met Rebecca.
Hi, Rebecca. Yes.
I am super happy to
Welcome.
defer to Dawn, though, if you'd like.
You go ahead.
Good evening, Chair Quaylam.
Yeah.
Okay.
Feel it. Yep.
Just
Yep.
making sure that I'm in the right order here. Good evening, Chair Quaylam, members of the board. My name is Rebecca Cameron, and I am the Human Resource Director for Clatsop County. The item I am presenting for board approval is the collective bargaining agreement between Clatsop County and Clatsop County Law Enforcement Association, and known to us as CLIA. I would first like to thank the bargaining team from CLIA and our Sheriff's Office representatives for their time and dedication to the process. In addition, I just want to thank the sheriff and the undersheriff for their leadership and guidance through both the collective bargaining process and the mediation process. As a new addition to Clatsop County, I arrived just in time to have the privilege of presenting to you a mutual collective bargaining agreement for CLIA. A few items for you to note. The contract length was increased this year from 3 years to 4. Language was added to, for the relief, I'm going to get this right, medico-legal death investigator, yeah. Employer contributions were increased to the health savings account, and the employer contributions were also added to health reimbursement accounts. And the resident deputy and DPSST certification allowances were increased. Those are kind of the highlights from the contract. Are there any questions from the board?
Any questions this time? Mr. Thompson.
I just want to know, what was the secret sauce? Because the commission, I don't know that we've ever seen a time when we have seen not a single person come and sit in here to make their presence known. So the achievement that you have and the success that you have seen, or that you have crested in on the wave that was the result of the hard work of, I mean, I think Paul Williams has done this for what, 25, 30 years, Paul? A long time. And it's I think it's a testament to the good feeling, the good nature, and the trust that I hope continues in the future. I have every reason to have confidence in that, so congratulations and welcome to our team.
Thank you, but that congratulations needs to go over to the sheriff's office for all their really hard work.
No, we applaud your efforts all around. Any other comments, questions?
Only that I have heard nothing but positive things from the members of that union, so.
Wonderful. Okay, do we have a motion?
Yes. I move that the board approve the 2023 to 2027 collective bargaining agreement between Clatsop County and Clatsop County Law Enforcement Association, and authorize the chairperson to sign the agreement.
Second.
Moved and seconded that the board approve the 2023-2027 collective bargaining agreement between Clatsop County and Clatsop County Law Enforcement Association, and authorize the chairperson to sign the agreements. All those in favor signify with an aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, and back to Human Resource Director Rebecca Cameron for the cost of living adjustment.
Yes, thank you, Chair Quayla, members of the board. The last item I have for you this evening is a cost of living adjustment for unrepresented employees. Clatsop County uses a May to May consumer price index to establish cost of living adjustment for all represented staff. This year, the CPI for the allotted time frame was measured at 4.5%. Because of this, all represented staff are receiving a cost of living adjustment of 4.5%, and we ask that you approve the equivalent adjustment for all unrepresented staff.
Okay,
Any
thank
questions?
you. Any questions?
Oh, Mr. Chair, could I make a motion?
Sure can.
I move that the board approve the attached resolution and order implementing a cost of living adjustment of 4.5% for Clatsop County unrepresented, confidential, casual, and contracted employees effective July 1, 2023.
Moved and seconded that the board approve the attached resolution and order implementing a cost of living adjustment of 4.5% for Clatsop County unrepresented, confidential, casual, and contracted employees effective July 1st, 2023. All those in favor signify with an aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much, Rebecca. Appreciate it. Great work. Okay. We have nothing else on our agenda this evening. Do we have anything for the good of the order? Okay, with that, we will go ahead and make short order of it.